He showed up at the shop in dirty clothes and asked to fix a car in exchange for food. Everyone laughed, called him crazy, until he put his hands on the engine and showed who he really was. The sun was beating down on the blacktop when Roger Silver walked up to Premium Motors. His clothes were stained, his hair unkempt, and the sour trace of a night on the street clung to him like an invisible brand. But his eyes, tired as they were, held a different kind of light, one nobody there knew how to read. Brian was hunched over the engine bay of a silver Mercedes, sweating and cursing under his breath. Beside him, two other mechanics, Claude and Robert, watched and tried to help. The owner of the car, Marianne, leaned against the wall with her arms crossed, clearly nervous, trying to keep her cool. "I can't believe this is happening," she murmured, running a hand through her hair. "I need this car working today." Brian looked up and wiped his forehead with the back of his wrist. "Ma'am Marianne, I'm doing everything I can. I've never seen a problem like this. The engine starts, but it won't make any power." "Have you tried everything?" she asked, trying to mask the anxiety in her voice. "Everything we know," Claude said, shaking his head. "Plugs, filters, cleaned injectors. Nothing solves it." That was when Roger eased closer, his worn flip-flops muffled against the shop floor. The three mechanics stared at him with a mix of surprise and discomfort. Marianne frowned but said nothing. "Excuse me," Roger said, his voice husky, polite. "Mind if I take a look at the engine?" Brian let out a short, dry laugh. "A look? You know anything about engines?" "I know a little," Roger answered simply. Robert laughed too. "A little. Man, this is a Mercedes, not a lawnmower." "I know it's a Mercedes," Roger said calmly. "C300, 2-liter turbo. I heard it when it rolled in. The problem's not where you're looking." Claude shot Brian a look of disbelief. Now the homeless guy's a Mercedes specialist. Marianne shifted, uncomfortable. Something about Roger's steadiness unsettled her, but not in a bad way. It was like he really did know what he was talking about. "Listen up," Brian said, standing and wiping his hands on a rag. "I don't know where you came from, but this is a professional shop. We don't need help from someone like me," Roger finished without any spite. "That's not what I meant," Brian lied, clearly embarrassed. "It is what you meant," Robert said, with no such restraint. "Man, you need a shower, not a rich person's car to mess with." Marianne pushed off the wall. "Guys, take it easy." "Ma'am Marianne, you don't need to worry," Claude said. "We'll fix it. We just need more time." Roger watched the open engine, his eyes tracking each component with a precision none of them noticed. "I can run a quick test to confirm a hunch." "What hunch?" Brian asked, trying not to sound interested. "The issue's in the ECU, not mechanical, electronic. That's why you can't find it." Robert pulled out his phone and started recording. "Guys, look at this. Homeless professor of fuel injection right here." "Robert, stop," Marianne said, but he kept filming. No, let me get this," he snickered. "This is gonna be gold." Claude chuckled too. "Post it. Homeless dude teaches class at Premium Motors." Roger didn't flinch. He'd heard worse. "If you give me a chance, I can fix it in a few minutes." "In exchange for what?" Brian asked, pure sarcasm. $100? "In exchange for a sandwich," Roger said. "Anything. I'm just hungry." That answer caught them off guard. Robert nearly dropped his phone laughing. "A sandwich, man? You serious?" "I am," Roger said, "and I can fix what you've been chasing for hours." Brian glanced at Marianne, who looked thoughtful. She stepped closer, meeting Roger's eyes. "Do you really understand this?" "I do, ma'am." "How do you know it's the ECU?" Roger pointed into the bay. From the sound. There's a specific noise when the camshaft position sensor feeds erratic data to the computer. It cuts fuel as a safety measure. Marianne looked at Brian. You checked that? We checked everything, Brian said, but his voice had lost its conviction. You haven't, Roger said calmly. You chased mechanical faults, but modern cars are computers. When a sensor fails, the car goes into protection mode. Robert kept filming. Folks, this is priceless. The man's schooling the pros. For the love of God, Robert, stop, Marianne said, firmer. Oh, come on, Marianne. This is comedy gold. Brian stepped toward Roger. All right. Say you're right. How do we fix it? I need a scan tool to access the injection control, reset parameters, and recalibrate the sensor. We don't have a scanner, Claude said. I know where there's one, Roger replied. Next door. The owner knows me. Brian and Robert traded a mocking glance. Sure he does. Marianne kept studying Roger. There was something about him, the quiet confidence, the technical fluency. It didn't sound like someone bluffing. And if it doesn't work? She asked. If it doesn't, you don't owe me anything, not even the sandwich. If it does, then I'd appreciate something to eat. That's all. Brian sighed theatrically. Fine. But if it doesn't work, you leave and stop bugging us. Deal. Roger nodded. Robert kept recording. This is gonna be epic. The drifter tries to fix a Mercedes. Roger walked to the small shop next door. It was simpler, nothing fancy, a one-man place. He greeted the owner like an old acquaintance and came back with a scanner in hand. Where did you get that? Brian asked, suspicious. From Mr. Frank, Roger said, plugging the tool into the car. Marianne watched every move. There was something familiar in the way he handled tools, a precision she knew but couldn't place. The scanner beeped while Roger navigated the menus with disarming ease. In minutes, he found the fault code. Here, he murmured. Cam phase sensor, intermittent signal. How did you know? Marianne asked, genuinely impressed. Roger didn't answer. He was concentrating, clearing codes, recalibrating values. His hands moved with surgical precision, like the device was an extension of himself. Claude stopped laughing when he saw how effortlessly Roger drove the scanner. Robert still filmed, but with less mockery and more curiosity. Done, Roger said, disconnecting the tool. Start it. Brian slid behind the wheel, turned the key, and the engine caught with a soft purr. He blipped the throttle, and the power came on immediately. The shop fell into a heavy silence. Marianne took the car around the block, then returned, eyes wide. I've never felt it run this well. It's like it's new. Roger was already coiling the cable to return the scanner. All set, ma'am. Problem solved. How did you learn to do that? Brian asked, the arrogance gone. Roger hesitated. I've worked on cars my whole life. Where? Different places, he said, evasive. Can I get that sandwich now? Marianne stepped closer, something shifting in her chest. Do you have a name? Roger. Roger what? Another pause. Just Roger. Robert still had his phone up, but he wasn't sure he should post the video anymore. What started as mockery had turned into something else. Brian held out cash. Here. You deserve more than a sandwich. No need, Roger said, refusing. We had a deal. Man, you fixed in minutes what we couldn't handle all day. Marianne pulled out money too. Please take it. You saved my day. Roger shook his head. I just wanted to help. Why? She asked. Why help people who treated you badly? Roger looked at her, and for a second she saw a deep, old sadness in his eyes, an ancient scar. Because everyone deserves a second chance, he said simply, and walked out, leaving behind a quiet shop and 4 people who didn't know they'd just met a legend. Days later, Roger found himself wandering the neighborhood near Premium Motors again. Not because he was looking for work, he knew he wouldn't be welcome, but something drew him back. Maybe it was the memory of his hands on a motor, those few minutes when he felt like himself again. The shop was busy, luxury cars filled the bays, tools clinked, voices rose. Roger hid behind a tree across the street, watching from afar. Brian was hunched over a red BMW, clearly frustrated. Even at a distance, Roger could see from the sharp motions and the tense posture that it wasn't going well. Claude and Robert circled the car, looking more lost than Brian. "This can't be happening again," Brian muttered loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "Third car this week we can't fix." A well-dressed man in an expensive suit approached the BMW. He was the owner, Dr. Henry, a prominent attorney in town. "How's the progress?" he asked, trying to be cordial, but the irritation bled through. "Dr. Henry, we're almost there," Brian lied, wiping sweat from his brow. "Just one last tweak." "One last tweak? You've been saying that for 2 days. I need my car." Robert drifted off to the side and pulled out his phone. "Dude, I'm gonna get this." Brian's about to blow. "Stop," Claude whispered, but Robert was already recording. From across the street, Roger listened to the engine's uneven rhythm and knew the issue. A miscalibrated part. He could fix it in minutes, but he stayed back, remembering the laughter, the snide remarks, the way he'd been treated. A young woman stepped out of a taxi, a small child in her arms. It was Fiona, Dr. Henry's wife. The boy, little Peter, was quietly whimpering. "Henry, any luck?" she asked, worried. "Peter has a fever." "I need to get him to the hospital." Dr. Henry stared at Brian with controlled desperation. "They're working on it." "Ma'am Fiona, we'll fix it now," Brian said. "Just a few more minutes." "A few minutes? You said that yesterday and the day before," Dr. Henry snapped. "My son is sick." "I need the car." The tension in the shop got thick. Other customers drifted closer, curious. Robert kept filming, more interested now. "Folks, live drama at Premium Motors," he whispered to his phone. Claude tried to calm him down. "Dr. Henry, we'll get it. It's just a matter of time." "Time? Time is what my son doesn't have," the attorney shouted. Fiona began to cry, hugging the boy tight. "Henry, call a rideshare. We can't wait." "At this hour it'll be tough," he said, running a hand through his hair. Roger saw the child crying and felt his chest tighten. He remembered his own little girl, the frantic drives to the ER, the crushing helplessness when a car died at the worst moment. He couldn't just stand there. He crossed the street slowly, knowing he'd probably be thrown out again, but unable to watch a child suffer. "Excuse me," he said, approaching. Brian looked up and his expression soured instantly. "Oh no." "What does he want now?" Robert asked, still filming. Dr. Henry looked at Roger with disdain. "Who is this?" "Nobody important," Brian answered quickly. "Just someone who shows up once in a while." Roger ignored the insults and went straight to the point. "Can I take a look?" "The child needs the hospital." "You?" Dr. Henry laughed bitterly. "You'll solve what 3 professional mechanics couldn't?" "I can try." Fiona looked at Roger, desperate. "Do you understand cars?" "A little," he said modestly. "A little?" Robert barked a laugh. "This is the guy who fixed Marianne's Mercedes the other day." Thought he was a mechanic. Turned out he is. Dr. Henry frowned. Brian flushed. He got lucky. Pure coincidence. "Coincidence?" Roger asked gently. The cam sensor really was failing, wasn't it? Brian had no answer. He'd tested the sensor after Roger left and discovered it had in fact been bad. Let him try, Fiona pleaded, turning to her husband. Please, Henry. Our son is sick. Fiona, this is ridiculous. He's a what? She cut in. A person who offered help when our son needs it. Roger stepped up to the idling BMW and rested his palm on the engine. He closed his eyes, feeling the vibrations, listening to each sound. It was like the car was talking to him, telling him where it hurt. The fuel pump is failing, he said. It's not holding steady pressure. That's why it stumbles. Brian stared. How can you tell just by listening? Experience, Roger said. Got a fuel pressure gauge? Claude fetched the tool, still skeptical. They hooked it up and the reading matched Roger's call. The pressure wavered when it should have been constant. I don't believe this, Robert murmured, recording. He nailed it again. Dr. Henry looked at Roger with a new expression. Can you fix it? Yes, but I'll need a new pump. It's not a quick patch. Where will you get one? The parts store on the corner. About $300. Brian jumped in. Dr. Henry, I can go get it right now. How long to install? The attorney asked Roger. 15 minutes. Fiona looked at her husband through tears. Please, Henry. Dr. Henry pulled cash from his wallet and pressed it into Brian's hand. Go! Now! Brian sprinted. Robert kept the camera rolling, finally more awed than cynical. Folks, you're not gonna believe this. The man's practically the shop's chief now. While they waited, Fiona approached Roger. Thank you, she said simply. I don't know who you are, but thank you for helping. Roger nodded, glancing at the little boy who had stopped crying and now watched him with bright curiosity. What's his name? Peter. He's 3. He's going to be okay, Roger said, making a silly face that drew a shy smile from the child. Dr. Henry watched in silence. There was something about this man that didn't add up. His words, his movements, that technical instinct. None of it matched the rough exterior. Where did you learn mechanics? He asked. Roger hesitated. Worked with cars for a long time. In what shop? Several shops, he said evasively. Brian came back with the new pump. Got it. This the one. Roger inspected it. Exactly. I'll put it in now. He set to work. His hands moved with unnerving precision, like he knew every bolt in that engine by heart. In minutes he had the old pump out, the new one in, lines reconnected. All set, he said, wiping his hands. Start it. Dr. Henry hit the starter. The engine purred, smooth as silk. He pressed the pedal. The response was instant and clean. Incredible, he murmured. Fiona climbed in with Peter. Henry, let's go. We have to get to the hospital. Before getting in, Dr. Henry stepped to Roger. What do I owe you? Nothing. I wanted to help the child. Nothing? The attorney repeated, stunned. You just saved my son's day and you want nothing? Roger glanced at the boy in the back seat, now lively. I've already been paid. Dr. Henry handed over a business card. My name is Henry Adams. If you ever need anything, call me. Thank you, sir, Roger said. The attorney drove off. Robert was still filming. That was surreal. Nobody is going to believe this. Brian shuffled up, clearly embarrassed. How do you do that? Do what? Diagnose by sound. I've worked cars for years and I've never seen anything like it. Roger didn't answer. He started to leave, but Brian followed. Wait, you can't just walk away. Who are you, really? Roger turned. For a moment his eyes showed that old, deep sadness. Someone who used to be much more than he is now. Then he disappeared into the noise of the street, leaving Brian with more questions than answers. Robert stared at the video on his phone. Brian, we have to find out who he is. Why? Because nobody knows this much without a story. And Robert was right. Roger had a story that would change everything once it came out. The video Robert shot at the shop stirred up the internet. He posted it with the title, "Homeless Man Fixes Cars Better Than Professional Mechanics," and in a few days, it had thousands of views and hundreds of comments. Most people doubted it was real, but some replies stood out. "This guy reminds me of someone," one user wrote. "The way he handles the engine, his hands. I've seen this before. Too much precision to be random coincidence," another said. "This man has a history." Marianne saw the video too. Scrolling at home, the clip popped up in her feed. She watched it 3 times, studying every move Roger made, every word he spoke. Something about the voice, the way he worked, felt familiar. She remembered her own father, who had slipped away when she was 15. He drank too much, lost everything to alcohol. But before booze wrecked his life, he was a gifted mechanic who fixed impossible cars and always spoke of a legendary American driver from the 90s. "Golden hands," she whispered, recalling what her dad used to say. He always talked about a guy they called Golden Hands. Curiosity consumed her. The next day, Marianne returned to Premium Motors. She found Brian bent over another car, still frustrated. Claude and Robert stood by, as lost as their boss. "Trouble again?" she asked. Brian looked up, surprised. "Mrs. Marianne, you came back?" "I want to ask about the man who fixed my car." "Do you know anything about him?" Robert perked up. "Did you see my video? It's over 50,000 views. I saw it, and I'm curious. Where do you think he learned so much?" Brian shook his head. "No idea, but I'll say this. I've never seen anyone diagnosed like that. It's like he talks to the engine." "Talks how?" she asked. "He puts a hand on it, closes his eyes, and in seconds he knows what's wrong." "It isn't normal." Marianne felt a chill. "My dad did that. He used to say every engine has its own voice." "Your dad was a mechanic?" Claude asked. "He was. And he always talked about a driver from the 90s, someone who, besides racing, understood engines better than any engineer. He'd tweak his own car and then go win. They called him something with hands." Brian's eyes widened. "Golden hands?" "That's it." "Do you know him?" "My dad loved racing," Brian said. "Always talked about that guy. Roger Silver, Golden Hands, 3-time U.S. rally champion." Silence fell on the shop, heavy as lead. "Roger Silver," Marianne repeated slowly. "The homeless man who fixed my car said his name was Roger." "No way," Robert whispered. "There's no way it's the same man." "Why not?" she asked. "Because Roger Silver was a millionaire. He ran his own team, had big sponsors. Why would he be living on the street?" Brian pulled out his phone. "I'm looking up old photos." As he typed, Marianne's heart raced. If it was who she thought, the story was going to be far sadder than she imagined. "Found him," Brian said, showing the screen. "Roger Silver, U.S. rally champion in 1995, 1997, and 1999. On the screen, a younger man held a trophy, smiling beside a rally car. Even with darker hair and a clean-shaven face, the eyes were unmistakable, the same tired eyes that had fixed Marianne's Mercedes. "My God," she whispered, "it's him." "Is it really him?" "What happened to him?" Claude asked. "How does a champion become a tragedy?" Brian kept reading. "Says here that in 2009, he lost his wife and daughter in a car accident. After that, he vanished from the racing scene." Tears flooded Marianne's eyes. The story was worse than she feared. "He lost his family and apparently lost everything else," Robert murmured, reading over Brian's shoulder. "Says he sold the team, left competition, and never appeared publicly again." That was 15 years ago, Brian calculated. Where was he all that time? On the streets, Marianne said, voice breaking. She thought of her father again, how alcohol became his refuge after losing his job and self-respect, how he sank deeper, losing family, home, dignity, and how she, just a teenager, didn't know how to help. We have to find him, she said, suddenly resolute. For what? Robert asked. To help. To give him a second chance. Brian looked skeptical. Mrs. Marianne, with respect, the man's been on the street for years. If he wanted help, he would have asked. You don't understand, she said, wiping a tear. My father was lost too. He drank too much. He ended up on the streets. I was too young, too scared to help. He died before I could do anything. The shop went quiet. If I can't save my father anymore, I can at least try to save someone living the same pain. Robert put his phone away, moved by her story. You're right. We need to find him. But where? Claude asked. He shows up sometimes, but we don't know where he stays. He's unhoused, Brian said. Probably sleeps nearby. Marianne stood. Let's look. You know the spots nearby where folks camp? There's a little square 3 blocks from here, Robert suggested, and an overpass where I always see people sleeping. Then let's go now. Brian hesitated. Mrs. Marianne, maybe wait for him to come back. No, she said firmly. Every day is another day of suffering for him. My dad waited for help that never came. I won't let that happen again. The 4 left the shop and walked to the square. It was mid-afternoon. A few unhoused people sat on benches in the shade. Marianne approached an older man. Excuse me. Do you know a man named Roger, grey hair, around 50? The man eyed her warily. Know him? I do. Why? Did he do something wrong? No, nothing like that. We want to help him. Help? The man laughed without humor. Nobody helps anyone out here, lady. We keep to ourselves. Please, Marianne said. It matters. He studied her face, searching for bad intent. Apparently satisfied, he pointed down the street. Under the main overpass, but be careful. Roger's not like the others. He's got a story, and stories hurt. What story? She asked. Don't know it all. I just know sometimes he drinks and cries about a little girl. A daughter he lost. Breaks your heart. Marianne felt her chest clench. The daughter from the accident. The grief he'd carried all these years. Thank you, she said, turning to the mechanics. Let's go. They walked in silence to the overpass. Beneath the concrete were makeshift tents and people living in rough conditions. The smell of urine and trash was sharp, but Marianne didn't flinch. Roger, she called. Roger, are you here? No answer. They wove between the tents, searching. Robert found him first. He's here, he whispered. Roger sat alone in a corner, holding an empty bottle and staring at a crumpled photograph. Marianne approached slowly. He looked different from the sure-handed man who had fixed her car. Broken, vulnerable, lost in his grief. Roger, she said gently. He raised his eyes, took a few seconds to recognize her. You're the lady with the Mercedes. That's right. May I sit? He nodded. He tucked the photo into his pocket quickly, but Marianne caught enough. A smiling little girl. His daughter, most likely. I came looking for you, she said, sitting on the ground beside him. Why? Because I found out who you are. He tensed. I'm not anybody important. Yes, you are. You're Roger Silver, golden hands. Silence settled, heavy with pain. Roger shut his eyes, as though hearing his own name tore open a wound that never healed. I was, he said at last. A long time ago. Could you be again? No. He shook his head. Not after what happened. Not after losing everything that mattered. Tears slid down Marianne's face. I know what it is to lose someone. I lost my father to alcohol when I was a teenager, and every day I wonder if I could have done something different. Roger looked at her, finally paying full attention. I don't want to carry that weight again, she said. I don't want to look back and know I met someone who needed help and did nothing. Why do you care? He asked, voice raw. Because when I look at you, I see my dad. I see a good man lost in pain, and this time I can help. Roger glanced at Brian, Claude, and Robert, hovering nearby, listening. You all came to find me? We did, Brian said. We want to offer you a chance to start over. Start over? Roger let out a bitter laugh. You don't come back from where I've been. You do, Marianne said, firm. With help, with treatment, with people who believe in you. Roger pulled out the photo and stared at it with infinite sadness. She was 8 when she passed, 8 years ahead of her. It wasn't your fault, Marianne said softly. It was. I was driving. If I'd been more careful, paid more attention. His voice broke. Accidents happen, she whispered. Punishing yourself forever won't bring them back. Roger looked from the photo to Marianne. For an instant, she saw a glimmer of the man he had been, the champion who never backed down. What are you proposing? Brian stepped forward. A job at the shop as our lead mechanic. Fair pay on the books. And I, Marianne added, will cover treatment to help with the drinking. A place to live, new clothes, a real restart. Roger sat silent for a long minute, processing. Finally, he looked at the photo again. She used to say I could fix anything that was broken, he murmured. Maybe it's time to try fixing myself. And for the first time in years, Roger Silver smiled. Weeks after that meeting under the overpass, Roger sat in the waiting room of a rehab clinic. His hands trembled slightly, not only from withdrawal, but from the weight of being back in a medical environment. The last time he'd stepped into a hospital had been to say goodbye to his wife and daughter. Marianne was beside him, pretending to flip through a magazine but not reading a word. She could feel his anxiety. Brian sat across the room, fidgeting with his phone every few minutes, clearly nervous for him. Mr. Roger Silver, a nurse called from the door. Roger rose slowly, legs still weak. Marianne moved as if to go with him, but he shook his head. I need to do this alone, he said, his voice rough but resolute. The session lasted 2 hours. When Roger came out, he looked drained, shaken. The psychiatrist had pulled open old wounds, forcing him to speak of his daughter, the accident, the wasted years. How was it? Marianne asked gently. Hard, Roger admitted, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. But necessary. On the way back, they passed Premium Motors. A commotion outside caught their attention. 3 luxury cars were parked up front. A crowd gathered, voices raised. Claude and Robert waved frantically near a red Ferrari. The owner, a sharp-suited businessman named Mark Auguste, looked furious. You don't understand, he shouted. This car needs to be running today. I have a presentation to international investors. If I don't get there, I lose a $50 million contract. Mr. Auguste, we're doing everything we can. Claude tried to calm him. The possible isn't enough. I called 3 different mechanics, and none of them fixed it. This shop was recommended as the best in town. Robert, sweating, stammered. Sir, we can try a few more things. Try? You've been at this since 6 in the morning. My presentation is in 2 hours. Mark exploded. The scene was unraveling fast. Customers started whispering, questioning whether they should trust their cars here. Premium Motors' reputation hung by a thread. That was when someone in the crowd recognized Roger. "Hey, aren't you the guy from the video?" a young man called out. "The guy who fixes cars?" Heads turned. Robert flushed. He was the one who had posted those videos. Mark looked Roger up and down with disdain. "So this is the miracle mechanic? A homeless drunk?" "Mr. August," Brian cut in, trying to protect him. "He really knows cars." "Knows cars?" Mark sneered. "This Ferrari is worth $500,000. You expect me to let an addict in recovery tinker with it?" "Yes, that's me," Roger said calmly, though his voice carried a shadow of pain. The silence was thick. Mark realized he'd been cruel, but pride kept him from backing down. "That's not what I meant," he muttered. "It is," Roger replied evenly. "And you're right to doubt me. I am all the things you think I am. But your car has a direct injection fault. One of the injectors is clogged with high-octane residue." Mark's mouth fell open. "How could you know that without even looking?" "I don't need to look. I heard it when you tried to start it. That sound is unmistakable when the air-fuel mix isn't even." Claude leaned close to Brian and whispered, "He's right. We tried everything but the injectors." Brian's mind raced. He knew Roger could fix it, but it was a Ferrari, not just any car. "Mr. August," Marianne stepped forward, "may I speak with you privately?" They moved a few paces aside. The crowd hushed. "Sir, I'm Marianne Fields, CEO of Fields Development," she said. "This man fixed my Mercedes when no one else could. If he says he knows the issue, believe me, he does." Mark frowned. "Look at him. How can I trust?" "For the same reason I did," she said firmly, "because appearances deceive. And because you don't have much time or many options." Mark checked his watch. Barely over an hour remained before his presentation. A cab would make him late. A rideshare might get stuck in traffic. "If he ruins something?" Mark asked. "I'll take full responsibility," Marianne said. "Any damage, I'll cover. Any damage to a Ferrari could top 100,000. "I'll cover it," she repeated, unwavering. Mark exhaled. "Fine. But if it isn't fixed in 30 minutes, I stop it." Roger approached the Ferrari as if greeting an old friend. His hands, shaky at the clinic earlier, were steady now. He lifted the hood and quickly located the problem. "I need a special key to pull the injectors," he said. "We don't have it," Brian worried. "I do," said a voice behind them. Everyone turned. It was Frank, the owner of the small shop next door. He carried a battered toolbox. "Heard the commotion, brought my specialty tools. You'll want the 8mm hex and the magnetic Phillips." "Thanks, Frank," Roger said, taking them. The crowd pressed closer. Robert filmed again, but now with respect. Mark kept checking his watch, sweat beading. Roger worked like a surgeon, removing each injector, inspecting under the light. On the third, he found it, a tiny blockage. "This needs ultrasonic cleaning," he said, "but there's no time." "What now?" Mark demanded. "There's a workaround." "Not ideal, but it'll hold." "What?" "Isopropyl alcohol and a fine bristle brush. If I'm careful, I can clear it manually." 15 minutes. Mark glanced at his watch. Risky, but still possible. "Do it." Frank dashed to his shop and returned with the supplies. Roger began the most delicate work of his life. Each motion had to be exact. One slip, and a $50,000 injector would be destroyed. The crowd held its breath. Even the kids playing outside stopped to watch. After 12 tense minutes, Roger reinstalled the injector. "Try it." Mark jumped in, turned the key. The Ferrari roared to life, smooth as silk. He tapped the accelerator. The engine responded like brand new. "Incredible," he whispered. The crowd erupted in cheers. Robert captured every second. Mark stepped out, shame on his face. "Sir, I owe you an apology. I judged you without knowing." "No need," Roger said quietly. "You acted cautiously." "It's normal." "Normal? No." Mark pulled cash from his wallet. "How much do I owe?" "Nothing. I just wanted to help." "Nothing? You just saved a $50 million contract. Take this at least." Roger hesitated, looked at Marianne. She gave a discreet nod. "Thank you," he said, accepting. Mark slid back into the Ferrari, but called out before leaving. "If you ever need anything, look me up." Mark August. Everyone in this city knows me. Then he sped off. The crowd began to disperse, but several people stayed. "Mr. Roger," an elderly woman said, "could you look at my car? It's been acting up." "And mine too," said another man. "The other shops say it's hopeless, but after what I saw..." Within minutes, a line had formed. Brian stood aside, wide-eyed. Robert leaned over. "Dude, I think we just found the answer to all our problems." Marianne came close to Roger, who was overwhelmed by the attention. "You okay?" "Am I?" he asked. She could see the emotion in his face. "You are useful," she told him softly. "You always were. You just needed the chance." Roger looked at the people waiting, then at Brian, Claude, and Robert. For the first time in 15 years, he felt part of something. "I think I'm ready to accept that job offer," he told Brian. Brian grinned. "Lead mechanic position is still open." And right there, outside Premium Motors, surrounded by respect instead of mockery, Roger Silver started to believe there might be hope. Weeks later, life was different, but not easy. The rehab program hit Roger harder than any seized bolt or stripped thread ever had. Some nights he woke drenched in sweat, trembling, calling the names of his wife and daughter. Marianne had rented a small apartment for him near Premium Motors, but after so many years on the street, a bed felt foreign. He spent long hours on the balcony, staring at the stars and wrestling the urge to drink. At the shop, things were booming, almost too much. Robert's videos kept spreading, and people drove in from neighboring towns just to watch the miracle mechanic work. Brian was thrilled by the business, but worried about Roger. He showed up early, solved the impossible jobs with uncanny ease, yet his gaze often drifted somewhere far away. "Roger," Brian asked one morning as Roger leaned over a Porsche, hands moving on instinct, while his mind traveled elsewhere. "How are you really?" Roger paused. "Why ask?" "Because you fix everything, you work perfectly, but it's like you're carrying the world on your back." "I am," Roger said. 15 years of guilt doesn't vanish in a few months. Claude burst into the bay. "Guys, we've got a situation." A BMW X6 just rolled in. Armored glass, beat to hell. Owner says it's urgent. Outside, a black X6 idled rough, something rattling deep inside. The driver stepped out. Henry Adams, the attorney Roger had helped months before, sweaty, scanning the street, on edge. "Dr. Henry," Brian said, recognizing him. "Aren't you Peter's dad?" "I am," Henry cut in, "and I urgently need Mr. Rogers' help." Roger came forward. "What happened?" "It's a long story," Henry said, catching his breath. "I'm getting threats over a case. Somebody tailed me this morning. During the chase, I pushed the engine too hard. Now it's knocking. Tonight I have a meeting with witnesses. If they agree to testify, we'll finally get justice for a family whose son was killed by a drunk driver. If I can't make that meeting, the case collapses." "What kind of timeline?" Roger asked, lifting the hood. 6 hours. The meeting's at 7. Roger's face tightened. The damage sounded deep. Serious internal wear. The kind of job that means tearing the top end apart and doing it right. Brian looked at him and whispered, "This is 2 days' work." Roger saw the fear in Henry's eyes and thought of the little boy he'd helped once. He also thought of all the families who never saw justice, of lives shattered by drunk driving. "I'll try," he said, "but I can't do it alone. We'll need all hands." "You have mine," Brian said. "And mine," Claude added. "Mine too," Robert said, pocketing his phone. "No filming." "I'm actually useful, promise." Marianne hurried in. "What can I do?" "Parts," Roger said. "Fast. I'll need a full list. Gaskets, timing components, bearings, fluids, torque to yield bolts, exact specs. It has to be perfect." "I'm on it," she said, already dialing. What followed across the next 6 hours became shop legend. Roger turned into a conductor before an orchestra. "Brian, get the head off while I prep the block. Claude, degrease everything, no residue. Robert, hold this fixture steady and feed me the torque pattern when I call." He worked like a surgeon in an operating room, each motion efficient, each decision precise. Customers hovered at bay doors, whispering as parts laid out across clean carts shifted from wreck to restoration. "How does he know where every fastener goes?" a customer murmured. "Experience," Brian answered, sweat running down his temples. 30 years inside engines. Marianne rushed back with boxes stacked to her chin. "Everything you asked for," she said. "Supplier said he's never had someone request such a surgical list." "Thank you," Roger said without looking up. The clock surged forward. 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Henry paced, checking his watch every few minutes. "Will it be ready?" he asked for the 10th time. "It will," Roger said, though Brian could see his hands begin to tremble with fatigue. "If it's not perfect, it's wrong. Lives depend on this being right." At 6:30, a tiny, crucial fastener slipped from Roger's fingers. It pinged off a brace and vanished beneath a tool cart. "Damn!" he breathed, dropping to his knees. "I got it!" Claude shouted, fishing the screw out from under a torquoise wrench. They reassembled in a blur. At 6:50, Roger closed the hood and stepped back, pale but steady. "Test it." Henry started the X6. The engine settled into a smooth, confident idle. He pressed the pedal. Power came on clean and strong, like a new heart beating. "Incredible," Henry said, climbing out. "How did you do 2 days' work in 6 hours?" Brian thumbed toward Roger, who leaned on a bench, exhausted. "We didn't." He did. Henry took Roger's hand in both of his. "I can't thank you enough. You may have just helped secure justice for a family who lost everything." "I only did my job," Roger said quietly. "No, you performed a miracle." Henry slid into the car and sped off toward the meeting. They stood there in the lingering heat of the evening, stunned by what they'd pulled off. Brian shook his head. 6 hours. We did in 6 hours what takes 2 days. Robert, who hadn't filmed a second of it, finally glanced at his phone. "The Ferrari video just broke 1 million views. Look at these comments," he read aloud. "This guy's a living legend. Anybody know where to find him?" Roger Silver was gone, but now he's saving impossible cars. He scrolled, eyes widening. Some people even recognize him from the racing days. Marianne sat beside Roger as he stared at his hands. "How do you feel?" "Tired," he said, "but useful. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I made a difference." "You did," she said, "not just today. Since you walked in here, you changed everything." "You changed us too," Brian added, The shop has never run this well. People trust us because of you." Roger managed a small, real smile. "You saved me, got me off the street and gave me reasons to wake up." "You saved yourself," Marianne said softly. "We just opened a door." Robert cleared his throat. "Roger, can I ask something?" "Sure. How do you work with that speed and accuracy?" Roger sat with it. "Because now I have a reason. I used to chase trophies. Today I fix cars to help people." "What's the difference?" "All the difference. When you work for something bigger than yourself, your hands find strength you never knew." Brian blinked fast and looked away. "Roger, you're an inspiration." "I'm not," Roger said. "I'm just a man who learned it's never too late to start over." What Roger didn't know was that Henry's meeting was a complete success. The witnesses agreed to testify, the case gathered steam, and the wealthy drunk driver was convicted. Word traveled, first among lawyers, then journalists, then everywhere online. Someone connected Robert's videos to the legend from the 90s. Pictures resurfaced, threads were woven. One ordinary afternoon, vans from local news stations pulled up in front of premium motors. Then more vans, cameras, boom mics, a swarm of reporters. "Roger," Brian said, peeking out the bay door, "we've got a problem." Roger looked up from the engine he was working on and saw the crowd descending. His blood ran cold. "What do they want?" Robert jogged in, breathless. It exploded online. "They know who you are. It's on every site." He held up his phone. The headline read, "Roger Golden Hands. Silver is alive and working as a mechanic downtown." "How did they figure it out?" Roger asked, voice trembling. After the Henry case, the story spread. They matched the videos, your build, your way with engines. It wasn't hard to put together. Microphones and lenses closed in. "Mr. Roger Silver," a reporter called, "are you the 3-time US rally champion? Can you confirm you lived on the streets all these years? What happened after the accident?" Questions hit like hailstones. Roger backed against the shop wall. Marianne rushed to him, placing herself between him and the press. "Please," she said, "slow down. You can't storm in like this. Ma'am, we're the press. We have a right to ask." "You do," she said, "and he has a right not to answer." Brian stepped up beside her, the two of them a human shield. "Roger's working. If you want to talk, schedule it properly." But they kept pushing. "Mr. Silver, you vanished in 2009. Where have you been?" Roger looked at the eager faces, the cameras thrust forward, and felt ambushed. He remembered those last, brutal days as a driver, when the only thing anyone wanted was pain and spectacle. "I have nothing to say," he said, trying to slip back into the shop. "But the public wants to know," a reporter insisted. "You were a national hero." "I was," he said bitterly. "I'm not anymore." Claude rolled the bay door down. The crowd stayed outside, growing. Curious neighbors, fans who remembered, clients stuck at the curb with appointments. "This is going to be impossible," Brian muttered, peeking through the blinds. Robert scrolled through his feed, eyes shining and wet. "The Ferrari video hit 5 million. Look at these comments," he read them aloud. "He was my hero in the 90s. I'm crying. He lost his family and still found a way to help people. A champion who never stopped showing up." Marianne found Roger in a folding chair, head in his hands. "How are you?" "Destroyed," he said. "It's been so long. I thought no one remembered." "They did remember," she said, "and now they know you didn't give up. You found a new way to be a hero." "Hero?" He laughed without mirth. "I'm an alcoholic in recovery, who lost everything to my own mistakes." "You're a man who turned pain into purpose," she said. You use what you know to save people. Outside, voices rose, not just reporters now, but ordinary folks. An elderly man shouted through the door. Roger, you pulled me out of a wreck in 1998 on Route 14. You stopped your car and saved me. Roger lifted his head. Another called, My son was your fan. He passed away last year, but he always wanted to meet you. Roger, go back to racing, someone yelled. America needs you. Brian cracked the door. The crowd wasn't a mob anymore. It was a vigil. Hand-lettered signs read, Thank you for not giving up. You are our inspiration. Stay strong, champion. A woman held up an old photo of Roger celebrating a win. Her little boy stared at it, dazzled. Why are they here? Roger asked, honestly confused. Because your story reached them, Marianne said. You're not just an ex-driver who became a mechanic. You're a proof that people can begin again. Robert kept reading comments. Listen to this. My dad was an alcoholic. After seeing Roger's story, he asked for help, 3 months sober. And this one. I lost my job and wanted to give up. Golden hands gave me strength to keep trying. Marianne squeezed Roger's hand. You're helping people you'll never meet. Outside, someone started humming the old jingle that used to play when Roger won. Others joined. Within minutes, the whole crowd was singing. Roger couldn't hold back tears. They didn't forget. They didn't forget the champion, Brian said. And now they know the man. Claude poked his head in again. There's a reporter out there who seems different. Says she lost someone to alcohol and wants to tell this right. No sensationalism. What story? Roger asked, wiping his face. The story of how a champion became an even better human being, Marianne said. Roger looked at the crowd, the signs, the families, and remembered his daughter's voice, telling him he always helped people. All right, he said, but I'll speak my way. Brian raised the door. The sidewalk went quiet. Roger stepped out, surrounded by faces that looked at him like he'd been brought back from the dead. Folks, he said, voice steadier than he expected, thank you for being here. I didn't think anyone remembered. We never forgot, someone called. Roger Silver, forever, another said. He smiled in public for the first time in years. I'm not the driver you knew. I'm just a mechanic trying to make a difference. And you do, a woman shouted. My husband saw your videos and found hope again. Roger's chest warmed. Maybe this exposure wasn't only pain. Maybe it was a chance to show that defeat can become a beginning. If my story helps even one person keep going, he said, looking straight into the cameras, then maybe everything I went through meant something. Applause rolled down the block like thunder. For the first time in 15 years, Roger felt whole. A year later, Roger stood in front of a building that looked like a dream made brick and steel. Sunlight flashed across the polished plaque. By the doors, Roger Silver Rehabilitation and Social Garage. Hands that transform. The complex had 3 floors. The first was a pro bono auto shop for low-income families. The second housed a substance recovery center. The third was a technical school where at-risk youth learned real trades. Marianne walked up, carrying a bouquet of white flowers, the same kind Roger brought to his daughter's memorial. How do you feel? She asked. Like she's here, he said, touching his chest, seeing what we built. It was opening day. Hundreds packed the entrance. People who'd found jobs through the program, families who'd gotten their cars fixed free, young students with bright eyes, folks who had clawed their way back from addiction. Brian jogged over in a crisp uniform with the center's logo. Everything's set. The first class wants to meet you. How many? Roger asked. 50, ages 16 to 20. Some came off the street, some never had a shot at school. Claude and Robert followed. Robert had become head of media for the project, documenting every transformation. Claude co-led the free shop with a volunteer crew. "Our numbers are wild," Robert said, buzzing. "In 1 year we helped over 1,000 families with car repairs, trained 200 young people, and supported 300 in recovery. Donations keep rolling in after that TV piece. And there's more," Claude added. "People want to replicate this model. Other cities are calling." Roger smiled, different from the fragile smile he'd worn that first day. It was the smile of a man at peace. A familiar family came through the crowd. Henry, Fiona, and Peter, a little taller now. "Uncle Roger!" Peter yelled, sprinting into his arms. "Peter, you grew!" Roger laughed. "How's school?" "Good. Dad says when I'm older, I can work here with you." Henry shook Roger's hand. "We can't thank you enough. That night you fixed my car didn't just save a meeting, it restored our faith." "You don't owe me," Roger said, setting Peter down. "You helped me as much as I helped you." A sleek sedan pulled up. Mark August stepped out with several business leaders. "Roger," he said, clasping him in an unabashed hug, "I brought friends." "Mr. Roger," said a woman with a firm handshake, "I'm Anna Palmer from Millennium Construction. We want to donate materials to help you expand." "And I," added another, "represent a regional dealership group. We'll supply parts at cost for the free shop." Roger swallowed hard. "Everyone, You deserve it," Mark said. "The day you fixed my Ferrari, you saved more than a contract. You recalibrated my priorities." The ceremony began. The mayor arrived with council members, reporters, neighbors. But the biggest surprise came late. Former drivers and crew chiefs from Roger's racing days stepped through the doors. "Golden hands," one called, eyes bright. "We finally found you." It was Sam, his old crew chief, hair white now, but grin unchanged. He pulled Roger into a fierce hug. "We looked for years, man. Then we saw what you built." Others crowded in, drivers who once battled him, techs who'd spun wrenches on his cars, journalists who'd covered his wins. "Roger," an ex-rival said, "we want to ask something. Come back to motorsports. Consultant, coach, anything. American racing needs you." Roger looked out at the center, at the people it served, at Marianne, now like family, and at Brian, Claude, and Robert, his brothers in the Bay. "Thank you," he said, "but my place is here. I help more people in a week under this roof than I ever did holding a trophy." Silence fell, respectful, understanding. The mayor took the mic. "We're here to open a project that has already changed thousands of lives. This isn't just a building, it's proof that it's never too late to begin again." Applause shook the glass. "Now," he said, "I'd like to invite Roger Silver to speak." Roger stepped forward, the crowd rising into a hush. 2 years ago," he began, "I was living under an overpass, lost in grief and alcohol. I thought my life was over. You could hear people breathing. But a few special people showed me that a fall isn't the end of a story. It's a chance to start again." He looked at Marianne, tears on her cheeks. "A woman taught me that helping others heals our own wounds." He turned to Brian, Claude, and Robert. 3 young men gave me a chance when I didn't deserve one." He looked out over the crowd. "And hundreds of you proved that a person's worth isn't measured by what they lost, but by what they choose to build after." The applause swelled and then softened. Roger reached into his pocket and unfolded a worn photograph, the same one he'd carried for years. "And this is especially for her," he said, holding it up. "Anna Grace. At 8 years old, she taught me that the greatest trophy is helping people. There were no dry eyes. So today we're not just opening a center," he said, We're making a promise. As long as I have strength, no one who needs help will be left behind." The applause thundered on and on. People cried openly. Others shouted words of encouragement. Robert filmed, knowing the moment would live far beyond that day. When the ceremony ended, the building buzzed with life. On the first floor, families rolled in with broken cars and rolled out with safe ones. On the third, students learned not only skills, but confidence. On the second, people fought through addiction with guides who had walked the same hard road. Marianne found Roger leaning on the balcony rail, watching it all. "You did it," she said. "The impossible dream." "We did it," he said. "None of this exists without you, without the guys, without everyone who believed." "And your daughter?" she asked softly. What would she say? Roger looked at the photo and smiled. She'd say, "I knew you could do it, Dad. I knew you could fix anything broken, even yourself, even myself." That evening, as the sun slid down the city skyline, the center pulsed with motion. Formerly unhoused mechanics taught apprentices how to listen to an engine's voice. Teenagers learned diagnostics alongside math and writing. Families hugged in the lobby of the recovery floor after hard-won milestones. Robert posted the opening video with the title, "From the Overpass to the City's Most Hopeful Address, The Complete Transformation of Roger Silver." It drew millions of views in hours, thousands of comments from around the world. Brian became the center's technical director. Claude ran the free shop program. Robert documented story after story of change, proving that everyday miracles happen when people choose to lift each other up. Marianne launched a foundation to replicate the model. Within 5 years, centers inspired by Rogers opened in 10 states: Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, Georgia, Texas, and Colorado, each one tailored to its community, but sharing the same heart. As for Roger, he finally found peace. Every morning he arrived early, pulled on a work suit, and wrenched side by side with people who, like him, had been handed a second chance. Each night before heading home, he visited the 3rd floor, where a small memorial displayed Anna Grace's photo. "One more day keeping our promise, kiddo," he'd whisper. More lives mended, more people helped, and when he stepped out into the evening glow, Roger Silver knew the most important truth life had given him. No matter how far you fall, you can begin again. And when your second beginning is spent lifting others, you find something greater than trophies or fame. You find purpose, you find peace, you find the certainty that your life has made a difference. 5 years after opening day, the Roger Silver Center was a national model for recovery and inclusion. But Roger didn't measure success in headlines or awards. He counted it in the smile of a young person who learned a trade, in the relief of a family who could drive safely to work, in the steady hands of someone who had put the bottle down and picked hope up instead, and in the quiet conviction that somewhere his little girl was proud of her dad for never giving up on honoring her memory. And so, the man once mocked for asking to fix a car for food became living proof that the right hands, moved by the right heart, can repair far more than engines. They can mend lives, restore dreams, and change the world, one person at a time. The end. Thank you all for watching. It's Mr. Hope. I love you all.